If we could please take a moment to collect ourselves, to find our seats. We are going to begin the service in just a few moments. Again, I kindly request that everybody please find their seats. Additionally, if I could just take this opportunity to just remind everybody to make sure their phones are off, or at the very least in the silent position, not to disturb the sacred funeral service. On behalf of the family, I want to thank everybody for joining us here. And for those who are watching online, thank you as well. Officiating our service today from North Shore Congregation Israel is Rabbi Wendy Geffen.
We're just going to wait 1 second. There's a few folders to be passed out. Just before we get started, it seems fitting to take a look at those folders, take a look at the picture of Betty on the front with her amazing smile, her bright, bright eyes. And just allow her to be here with us. There were some amazing photos and beautiful music playing, celebrating her very full life, and that's how she would want us to remember her. That is how we will remember her, and we'll let the warmth of her countenance fill this space. Birth is a beginning and death is a destination, but life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness and back, we pray to health again. From joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith. From defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death is a destination, but life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage made stage by stage to life everlasting. As we grieve Betty's passing this day, we turn first and foremost to her beloved family, and encircle them, wrap them up in all of our love, all of our care. And we extend that web of care, that enormous embrace that was so representative of how Betty approached the world, to everyone here. To wrap everyone who remembers Betty, who loved Betty and whom Betty loved, in the embrace of warmth, of comfort, of consolation, and of course, of gratitude. In this time of grieving, we turn to voices of Jewish tradition, more modern voices too, to guide us as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Those words of the 23rd Psalm, perhaps for you as they do for me, really remind me so much of Betty. This incredible life she lived, a life that demonstrated immense strength, a life where if you were to have asked her, she would have undoubtedly said that her cup runneth over, that goodness and mercy followed her all the days of her life. And whether in fact that was true or not, that is the lens through which she chose to see the world. And for that, she is a role model, and we are eternally grateful. The 90th Psalm. Adonai ma'onata hayita lanu bedor vador. O God, you have been our refuge in every generation. Before the mountains came into being, before you brought forth the earth and the world, from eternity to eternity, you are God. You return us to dust. You decree return, for in your sight 1,000 years are as yesterday when it's past, a watch in the night. The span of our life is 80 years and 10, or given strength 80 years. And those years pass by speedily, and then we are left in darkness. So teach us, God, to number our days, that we might attain a heart of wisdom. Turn to us, show mercy to us, satisfy us at daybreak with your steadfast love, that we might sing for joy all our days. Let your deeds be seen by your servants, your glory by their children. May your favor, O God, be upon us. Establish the work of our hands, that it might long endure. This Psalm 2 evokes so much of Betty. These psalmists wrote these odes to how we might live ideal lives. And as I was preparing for this service today, in each and every one of them, in these offerings of directive for how to live a good and meaningful life, you just can't help but hear, see, and feel Betty. To sing for joy all your days, to let your deeds be seen by your children, and let your children live on in that same spirit, that the work of our hands might long endure. The work of Betty's hands is right here, and it is so beautiful. A more modern message. What is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a bit better, whether by a healthy child or redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. We are gathered here today in sacred memory, in grief, and in gratitude to honor Betty's life. We gather knowing how close this loss comes to Marjie's passing, a reality, quite frankly, still unfathomable, and which aches so deeply. And we know how difficult it is that this family finds itself here together again. And yet, even as we name this pain, we also name something else that matters. Betty's death is not a tragedy. It is the closing of a long, full life. 9+ decades shaped by love, resilience, purpose, and deep, abiding connection. And so it is just as we grieve, we're also here to pay tribute to Betty. As the beloved wife of Richard and then Mel, both of blessed memory, of the most amazing mom to Marjie of blessed memory and of Barry, to Tom, to Maria, also of blessed memory and Jesus, and so too to Alyce and Phil, of Aimee and Stephen, Karin and Robert, all of whom Betty loved as her own. We pay tribute to Betty as the adoring grandmother of Hillary and Jim, Peter and Kayla, Brian and Sabrina, Neal and Karin, Jeff, Elizabeth, Mariano and Flora, Juan and Suzy, Bea and Sam, and Adam, Pam and Matt, Scott and Carlee. And as the cherished great-grandmother, it's quite a list of Jude, Myles, Clark, Lucas, Carmela, Emilio, Andrew, Paige, Lino, Matthias, Madison, and Toby. She lived to see and know the fourth generation of her family. And of course, is the adored aunt of Jay and Bridget, Bruce and Debbie, Lisa and Doug, Mitchell and Joan. And friend to so many. We gather as family across generations, as friends who were chosen and kept, as people whose lives were enlarged and deepened by knowing Betty. The book of Proverbs offers a description for what it means to live a life of meaning and fulfillment, noting that such a life is measured not by ease, but rather by depth. In its verses, it offers a description, a picture really, of the qualities a person meriting such a life might possess. Strength and dignity are her clothing. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. In Jewish tradition, strength does not mean a life without hardship. It means the ability to keep moving forward without becoming hardened. Wisdom is not cleverness or control. It is the capacity to learn, to adapt, to trust, and to grow. And kindness is not occasional. It is a way of being that shapes a home, a family, generations. These words feel especially true for Betty. Her life required strength early on. She met that challenge not with bitterness, but with resolve. She chose growth. She chose education. She chose to believe in people. And again, she chose to step in and to build. Betty lived with an innate wisdom, a calm, steady understanding of what mattered and what didn't. She didn't try to force people into becoming the people she thought they should be. Instead, she made space for them. She trusted. She allowed those she loved to become themselves, and in doing so, she gave them a rare and lasting gift. Kindness for Betty was not abstract. It showed up in loyalty and friendships that endured decades. It showed up in a home grounded in values, in Judaism, in generosity of spirit. It showed up in an open embrace wide enough to turn friends into family and family into something even larger than biology alone. Betty's life was a gift for anyone lucky enough to be held in the wide expanse of her embrace. The proverb concludes by reminding us that ultimately our deeds and our legacies live on long after we do, and that those souls who live lives of strength, of dignity, wisdom, and kindness, they will necessarily have legacies that endure. As in the closing verse, it reads, "Whenever people gather, they will speak of her deeds and praise her." We'll hear now from Peter, Bea, Barry, and Tom, each bringing words shaped by love, memory, and gratitude. Through their voices, Betty's life will be honored not only in what is said, but in what is felt. The values she lived, the relationships she nurtured, and the families she built and sustained. As they speak, may we hear Betty's deeds speak for her. just as they always have, and commit ourselves to continue to speak of her deeds, her life, her love, whenever people gather in her name. In this way, her name and her memory will always and only be for blessing. Peter.
Hi. Thanks to everyone for coming. Betty Blumenthal was born June 23rd, 1931 in Chicago, Illinois. She was the youngest of 8 children and a decade younger than her next youngest sibling. She did not have much of a relationship with her siblings or parents and entered the foster care after her mother's death when she was around 2 years old. For the rest of her childhood, she moved around the foster care system and did not have much of a family, only seeing her father once a week at most. In the summers, she would spend time with her sister, Evelyn, brother-in-law David, and their 2 sons, Mitchell and David. Cliff and Evelyn supported her all the way through college. After graduating high school, she moved to Champaign, Illinois, where she attended University of Illinois and studied special education with a focus on teaching the hearing impaired. She was fluent in sign language and eventually went back to school and earned her master's degree and worked at Lincoln School in Lincolnwood for many years until eventually traveling to multiple schools to work with hearing impaired children. While at U of I, some friends set her up on a date with a man named Richard Sandlow, who she would go on to marry. Betty and Richard married in June of 1953 and embarked on a 46-year love story. They immediately started a family, with Marjie being born just 9 months later. 3 years later, Tom came along, and Maria joined the family from Peru in 1970. Richard died in 2000, and in the mid-2000s, Betty met Melvin Worsek, and they got married in 2011. Betty and Mel completely integrated seamlessly into each other's families and expanded their love even further. Since she spent most of her childhood alone, it would have been easy for her to not be present and not know how to be a family woman. However, she was the complete opposite and built a family dynasty. From the beginning, Betty was dealt a bad hand. She outlived all of her siblings, 2 children, and 2 husbands. A lot of people in her situation wouldn't know what to do or how to handle the hardships, but Betty continued to live her life the best she could. Even after she was knocked over in her 80s by a running child in public and broke her hip, she never complained about anything and always made the most out of everything. She was always there for her children, 12 grandchildren, 12 great-grandchildren, and many nieces and nephews who she all loved immensely. As grandchildren, we have fond memories of going to her house for family dinners. We would all gather around her table and she would cook a feast. In elementary school, she would buy pumpkins and then have us all over to carve them. Grandma would also host all the grandchildren every year to make haroset. She would have stations set up and each grandchild would participate and have fun. Even when she was unable to physically chop the apples anymore, she still wanted to be together and had us at her apartment in Northbrook to make the haroset. It was such a special tradition she had with us right up until the end. She would go to every single sporting event, concert, and recital that she could. When Brian and I went to overnight camp in Wisconsin, even though no other kids had grandparents come, she always came on visitors weekend. Every single year on all of our birthdays, Grandma would call each one of us and sing happy birthday over the phone, even if she was going to see you later that day. In 2015, when my dad and I had the opportunity to go to the Final Four but would have had to miss Passover, my mom, thinking Grandma would be upset and tell us we shouldn't go, told us we had to call Grandma and get her approval. Much to my mom's dismay, Grandma responded, "I wouldn't go, but if I was you, I would." After Jude was born, one day he was brought over to Grandma's apartment. Even though Grandma wasn't moving well and was not able to get up by herself, she still sat on the floor to play with him. These are just a few of the ways she was an amazing grandma. Grandma was always doing things for us and always giving us gifts, but perhaps the biggest gift she gave us was not giving up after her heart valve replacement surgery. The surgery didn't go well, and Grandma was not doing well or feeling well. One day when I was visiting her in the hospital, she said to me she had a good life and was ready to go and stop fighting. I pleaded with her not to give up, that she had so much to live for and we all needed her. That was all she needed to hear, and kept fighting. Much like her early life, it would have been easy for her to give up, but she didn't, and she got better. She gave us all another 10 to 15 years with her and was able to see 7 of her grandchildren get married and meet some of her great-grandchildren. Grandma truly was a one-of-a-kind and such a special woman. She was as tough, resilient, and as adaptable as a person can come, But most of all, she was the most caring and loving grandmother and great-grandmother any of us could have asked for. She truly just wanted the best for all of us and would do anything to make us happy. None of us could have asked for a better grandma than Betty Sandlow. She will be missed and always hold a special place in our hearts. We love you, Grandma, and we'll miss you forever.
Thank you, Peter. Bia.
I imagine we're all feeling it. Feels like yesterday that we were all here. We've lost another matriarch. I told Barry yesterday about how much I was looking forward to being together. I hadn't been feeling well when I got the news about Grandma. So I texted him, "Family is medicine." It was the first phrase that came to mind in my communication with him. It occurred to me that if Grandma overheard me, if that were a prevailing theme of our gathering here today, in our remembrance of her, that she would have felt good about that. My grandma was many things: resilient, optimistic, and intellectual. When I think of my grandma, I think of her with a purse full of Kleenex in the New Yorker. I love that. When my mom passed, I think we started to look to each other to fill that space in each of us that my mom used to take. My grandma was a thinker. On our many phone calls, she would ask me what I was reading, to which I'd sheepishly say, nothing, but I have things on my list. What are you reading, Grams? She would tell me about just having finished Where the Crawdads Sing and how I just had to read it. In one particularly special and precious conversation, we talked about faith. She told me about her personal relationship with God, the silliness she felt, and the personal connection she felt with God. Why would God choose to talk to me when there's so much going on, she asked. The thought made her feel a bit ridiculous. She told me she felt like she had to become an adult at age 6 when she had to go into foster care, and how she didn't feel she would have had the strength to do that without God. She had a similar feeling after Papa died. I wasn't a pillar of strength, she said. My grandma, being what all of us would call a pillar of strength, drew her strength from God for all this time. Well, she felt silly at the thought of spending so much deeply personal time, of him spending so much deeply personal time with her. It felt obvious to me. My beloved grandma, of course he'd be with you. Yes, all along. What's with the he, my grandma would ask. I was raised Catholic. He. What if God is a black woman? I remember looking at her completely flabbergasted. No one really asked things like that in church, I guess. But that was the moment. I always loved my grandma, but that was the day I fell in love with her. And that's when I knew we belonged to each other. It was surely that kind of statement that would transpire between her and my mom and made us, without a shadow of a doubt, kindred. My grandma, this intellectual powerhouse of a woman, a baddie in every sense of the word, she yearned for family. Anytime I'd mention to someone that my grandma grew up in the foster care system, I'd quickly follow it up by saying, but you'd never know it. You wouldn't know it by the way she lived, so open-heartedly and with such optimism. But if you quiet down enough and listen closely enough, it's clear that her history had everything to do with the legacy that she left us with. this family, and each other. I grew up never questioning the fact that I had 3 sets of grandparents. The Peruvian ones, the Colombian ones, the white Jewish ones. Completely normal. It wasn't until an embarrassingly long time, probably 10 years old, that it occurred to me to say, wait a minute. Imagine most everyone is up to speed, but my mom was a foreign exchange student from Peru and adopted us as a new branch of family at the age of 17. And so the story started to unfold. I learned that a long time ago, my grandma lost her mother, and that tragedy was what led her to the childhood that she had. It's how I learned to be useful, she told me once. If I could be helpful in whatever home I was in, I knew I'd be okay. It was hard to hear that. I thought about the many ways she'd been a helper in her life, including her dedication to education for children with special needs. She chose the narrative of her story. Not once in my life did I ever hear a martyred or victimized tone from her. Life just was, so she just did. That was my grandma, taking the sourest of life's lemons and turning them into lemonade. She was the ultimate narrator in her life. She rewrote her story in strength and optimism at every turn, and it was truly both astounding and inspiring to witness. By an odd twist of fate, or perhaps by fate entirely, I learned that my maternal grandmother from Peru also tragically lost her mother when she was a small child. So my mom went from one household with a mother wound to another. My grandma embraced my mom with a warmth and understanding that brought a deep maternal comfort to them both. And the echoes of unimaginable loss in our family stories, my grandma, the supreme narrator, the maker of lemonade, turned this story of tragedy around and gifted my mom with relationship and love that turned into family, that turned into legacy. I think of my grandma in good times, but her greatest gift to me and to so many others is the inspiration she left us in times of darkness, to write our own story, to remember our strength, to reach out for one another. I can hear her in my mind now, wiping a single tear. Well, anyway, enough of that. Tell me about you.
Thank you so much, Bia.
Thank you. Peter, Bia, that was beautiful, both of you. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I first came into contact with Betty Sandlow, Mom, a little over 55 years ago when I was 17, when I dialed 674-6674. There were really no touch-tone phones in those days. It was rotary. A woman answered, and I said, "Hi, Mrs. Sandlow. This is Barry Rosen. Can I speak with Marjie?" And she said back in a cheerful and encouraging voice, "Marjie's not home right now, but she told me that if you called and if she wasn't there, you should try again." So I did. Marge and I started dating, and 5 years later, Margie's mom, Betty Sandlow, became my mom too. And she stayed my mom, my true mom, my second mom, in every possible way for the next 50 years. I always told everyone that I had the best mother-in-law in the world. Mom had a smile on her face almost all the time. Her smile and her positivity shone through everything she did and in who she was. Even when you talked with her on the phone, even that first time when I spoke with her, you could hear the smile in her voice. Her smile was a reflection of her positivity, of her lifetime of kindness, caring, and helping others. There was a song written in 1928, just 3 years before Mom was born. It was on the video that we showed before. It was called, "When You're Smiling, the Whole World Smiles at You." Mom intuitively knew the lesson from that song. Her entire life, she smiled at the world, and the whole world smiled back at her. Everyone loved Mom. You know, you've heard that Mom didn't have the easiest life, that her mother died when she was very young, the youngest child of a large family, and that her father simply couldn't care for her, and that from a very young age, she grew up in a series of foster homes. And then after a wonderful marriage to my father-in-law, her dear father, Richard, he passed away at age 70. A lesser person could have been bitter, but not Mom. She learned to adapt to every situation, to appreciate life, to show love and respect to everyone she came in contact with, to stay positive, and to build relationships. Mom, in fact, was a master at building relationships and at building family. Mom's love of family showed in the many families that she helped to create and that she loved unconditionally. Marjie and Tom, the family that Mom and Dad raised so beautifully. The fabulous family that Marjie and I were so lucky to be able to raise. The wonderful family that Tom and Joan were so lucky to be able to raise. The incredible Castillo family, who came into all of our lives and have stayed there forever because of Mom's initiative and love. The loving Worsek family, who, like us, cherished those wonderful years that Mom and Mel enjoyed together as husband and wife after Dad passed away. And when Mom blossomed yet again. The greater Sandlow family, in which Aunt Betty was so beloved. And the greater Rosen family, my big extended family, of which Mom became and stayed a central part. There was no denying Mom's strength. After Dad passed away, Mom lived independently for a number of years. She managed 2 households, one in Northbrook and one in Delray Beach, Florida, where she bought a second home. And Mom always stayed up with the times. Even at 90 years old, she was driving. She knew how to use her iPad and her iPhone. Although we had some Zooms where you'd see her and maybe her left ear, I don't know. And even at 90, she was regularly playing bridge. In the last couple of years, however, Mom was not able to be the independent person that she always had been. She didn't like having to rely on others but she never complained. She stayed positive. And for the last few years, Dolly and Marie were Mom's outstanding caregivers. We can't thank them enough for their care. Mom had a tradition that Peter referenced a bit earlier. Every year on our birthdays, she would call. You would hear that sweet, smiling voice. She wouldn't say, "Hi, it's Mom." Instead, she would just say, "Are you ready?" You'd recognize the voice. You knew what to expect. You'd say yes. And then you would hear, "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Barry. You know I love you." I'm going to remember so many things about Mom. But on every future birthday that I have, I'm going to hear that voice. I'm going to feel that love. And I'm going to see that smile.
Thank you, Barry. Tom.
I can't believe I'm here again. Oh, I was very lucky as a child. I had a great mother. Of course, I didn't realize it at the time. What made her great? It wasn't just that she chauffeured us around, encouraged us to have our friends hang out at our house, made great birthday parties for us, including cakes shaped like dogs, and turned our house into a home. What made her great was that she just really loved us. She didn't spoil us. We all had chores to do. But I always knew I was loved. Yes, even when I was a 13-year-old maniac, yelling that no one loved me, I knew deep down that she loved me. Equally as important, she had faith in me. When I became an adult and had children of my own, I started pestering them about doing homework. I started feeling like I was doing a lot of pestering and always hearing back things like, "I have plenty of time to do it later," or "I study better with the TV and radio on while I do homework." I started to wonder why I hadn't been pestered by my mom about doing my homework when I was growing up. Trust me, it wasn't because I was bringing home great report cards. My elementary and middle school report cards were a series of, "Tom has so much potential, but," and if Tom would just put a little effort in, and Tom's homework is consistently turned in late. So I asked my mom, 20-something years after the fact, "Mom, how come you never gave me a hard time about not working more at school?" And her simple response was, "I always knew that you would eventually find something that interested you and would work hard at it." In other words, she had faith in me. She knew that she was raising good kids and they would become good people whether they were good in school or not. Of course, she didn't lecture us on how to act. She simply set an example for us. Most of us learn to act based upon our parents' behavior. I was just incredibly lucky that I had a great parent to learn from. How did she know this? How did she know what to do? It wasn't because she had a role model to follow, because she simply didn't. When most children were following the role models of their parents, Mom was living in a series of foster homes. Here is what I think happened. Mom knew something was missing from her childhood. She probably didn't know exactly how to describe it, but she knew subconsciously or consciously, she knew something was missing. What was it? Unconditional love. I'm sure she never had it. Probably didn't even know the words to describe it. But she knew it was important. Somehow, without knowing exactly what it was, she gave it to all of us. Marjie, Maria, and I, all of our children, her nieces and nephews, Mel's children, and Mel's grandchildren. Somehow she knew that family was the key to her happiness. She started building one immediately. First with her husband, Richard, my sister Marjie and I, then with my sister Maria, then with cousins, then with our children, and then with Mel's children and grandchildren. As you all must know, Mom had one motto that she lived by. If life gives you lemons, make lemonade. That was Mom. Don't pout that someone didn't hand you a pitcher of lemonade. If you have lemons, you can make your own pitcher of lemonade. Be self-reliant. Whatever the obstacle, you can overcome it. Learn from your failures and move on. Of course, that's easy to say, but very difficult to do unless you have a fair amount of self-confidence. Well, who do you think we learn self-confidence from? Hint. You gain a lot of self-confidence from being around someone that shows absolute faith in you. Even if you might feel like you're messing up a lot. Yep, learn self-confidence from Mom. Self-confidence is good, but only in the right amount. Too much would be like making lemonade, too much would be like lemonade made only with lemon juice. It'd be very a bitter experience. Mom taught us to treat everyone with whom we interacted with respect. It sounds so obvious, but we all know many people that don't treat everyone respectfully. Why don't we? Why don't they? When they were young, their role models didn't. Mom took the lemonade philosophy one important step further. Mom wasn't some Ayn Rand wannabe. She believed if you're making lemons into lemonade, you should be making lemonade for everybody. Your sisters, your brothers, cousins, neighbors, basically anyone that was thirsty. Everyone doesn't return the actions, but most do, and hopefully the others learn. In any case, you keep making lemonade. You keep sharing the love, you keep being positive, and the family keeps growing and thriving. As my cousin Bruce said the other day, Aunt Betty didn't raise just a family. She built a dynasty. Although her physical and mental health declined rapidly, she was teaching me to the end. She was obviously in extreme pain and frustrated by the limitations that restricted her ability to enjoy life. When things were hardest, I never saw her get angry at the caregivers and doctors that tried to help her. She was being my role model and teacher. From the day I was born until Sunday, she was teaching me.
Tom, Barry, Bea, Peter, thank you for those incredible words and just moving, beautiful, true tributes to the incredible person that he was and will always be. Friends, if you're able, would you please rise? El Malay Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanefei HaShechina, Kedoshimu Tohorim, Kezoar Harakia Mazirim, Et Yakirenu Shelcha Leolama, Baal Harachamim, Yastirea Beseter Kenafecha Leolamim, Vitzur Bitzur Achayim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hunachalata, Tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Nomar. Amen. May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace the way of all things. May Betty's memory be for us an eternal blessing, and may we never let the light of her love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all her worthy and righteous deeds, that her memory will be forever bound up in the bond of life. May Betty's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love we shared and share can never be severed in sorrow. May she always rest in peace. We say together, Amen.
Friends, you may be seated for a moment. This concludes our service here at the chapel. Interment will take place immediately at the family plot at West Lawn Cemetery in Norwich. The family will be sitting Shiva later this afternoon at the home of Barry Rosen, 1040 Ridgewood Drive, from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m. Please note there is parking available. I'm just going to read it. Please park on one side of the street and not opposite of a driveway. I think that says it all. Memorial contributions in Betty's memory can be made to the Betty Sandlow Odyssey Scholarship Fund at University of Chicago. There's a lot of details on how to do that. You can go on the website, as well as our folder that you received on the way in. Additionally, you can make contributions in memory to the Jewish Child and Family Services, as well as the Greater Chicago Food Depository. For those who wish to join the family, a procession heading to the cemetery will be forming just outside the funeral home parking lot. If you're going to be in procession, please make sure you have your bright lights and blinkers on at all times. For a measure of safety, please make sure you have a magnetic flag that can be placed on the rooftop portion of your vehicles, as well as a flag that can be placed on the inside portion of the windshield as well. Please drive as closely to the car in front of you as safety permits. We want to avoid any large gaps, especially as we go through the intersections. Please avoid talking on any cellular device or texting on any cellular device while en route to the cemetery. And please use your horn to allow other cars to recognize that there's a procession heading to the cemetery. At this time, I'm going to ask the following grandchildren, all of the grandchildren from the Sandlow, Rosen, Fromm, Castillo, and Worsek families requested to be pallbearers. If I could ask all the grandchildren to please rise at this time and stand next to your grandmother's casket. Beautiful. At this time, I could ask everyone to please rise as we escort the family, the rabbi, from the chapel. Thank you so much.